Welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast, proudly presented by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. If you're like us and passionate about hunting, spearfishing, and many other outdoor-related pursuits, with an eagerness to fast-track your learning, then this podcast is perfect for you.
G'day legends, and welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. Today, James and I are driving back from a successful hunt. It is September 13th here in Montana in the United States of America. James and I are, this is tag 3 of 6 down, ticked off, tags punched on this public land adventure that we're on. It's been an absolutely awesome day. This morning actually started off a little bit slow for us. We had a sleep in and actually went into town, got some resupplies, got a heap of ice just to make sure that we can be out in the bush for the next 10 days or so. We had to refuel the car, do some washing, all those sorts of little chores and resupply sort of jobs, and headed back out as quick as we could, try to make it as short of a trip as possible so that we could sneak in a hunt this afternoon. And we're about set to tell you guys how that unfolded. Unfortunately, because we are out in the field, there won't be any FAQs answered in this episode, but if you guys do have any questions for us at the time of hearing this, then please obviously send them through to info@twinelements.com.au, or simply DM us at Ayden Doumtsis Outdoors, James Doumtsis Outdoors, or the Twin Elements Instagram account, and we'll strive to get back to you. We are currently driving on a little dirt road under the torch or headlamp and driving back to get back to camp after a big day. So hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Are you in the market for serious boots for all feet, terrain and adventures? Well, look no further than Lower Boots. We have been running the Lower Ranger GTX 3s for many, many years now without so much as a blister. The team at Lower have extended their generosity to you, our valued listeners, and supplied us with a unique discount code. Use code TWINELEMENTS10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Wear Lowers on your next hunt. Your feet will thank you.
Alrighty, so we may as well dive into the game species that has quickly become my arch rival or nemesis on this adventure. As you would have heard in previous podcasts, I spent the first 2 days of this trip pretty much targeting pronghorn and doing a little bit of scouting for deer and elk before season opener. And after a missed shot, a little bit of hunting on the pronghorn, sort of was happy that deer and elk rolled around, and then obviously was able to take my bull elk, sub James in with the bow, as you would have heard in previous podcasts. And for the last probably week or so, we've been hunting mainly deer and elk, but also a little sprinkle in there of antelope, and James was obviously successful, which you guys would have heard, which much to my appreciation, left pronghorn or sort of antelope hunting back up to me. And again, the one great thing that is near guaranteed with pronghorn is that you are going to see a few of them, that there is some really fun hunting to be had, and it actually makes the afternoons really enjoyable, because otherwise the deer and elk don't seem to be moving around just with the high sort of fall temperatures. The deer and elk don't seem to be moving around in the afternoon. So they've been a bit of a staple for us. Like, we'll try and do a deer and elk hunt in the mornings, and then at least get out for a pronghorn hunt, after lunch in the afternoons. And again, I've had no luck whatsoever. You wouldn't have heard, but earlier on in the week, I set up one afternoon. The sun was pretty much near setting behind me. It was the last hour of daylight. It was that golden hour, as you can imagine, and the mountains and scenery around us looked absolutely beautiful. And James and I had been sitting off a decoy that we affectionately named Gary the pronghorn, and I'd set him up, made a bit of a mock blind, I guess, with some taller sage, and was pretty much hidden about 100 yards over the ridge from where I knew some pronghorn were and had closed in on. And after sitting there for probably an hour and a half, the mob eventually ended up feeding away, and that left me a little bit disgruntled. I felt like we'd sat there and sort of wasted the afternoon, out of sight, hoping that they'd feed up over the ridge and spot the decoy and then come in. But the plan was probably too extravagant, to be honest. And when hunting pronghorn, what we've come to realise is that if you can find a mature buck holding does that haven't been educated to a decoy before, all you simply need to do, and it really is, it sounds super simple, but it is a little bit difficult because of their keen sense of eyesight. But you really do just have to remain undetected to the does and let that buck see the decoy and be able to successfully plant it in the ground, and you're pretty much well on your way to shooting a pronghorn buck. And again, that sounds super easy, but it's not the case, as you're about to hear, because this particular afternoon we'd just sat down, had that long waiting game, and the mob sort of fed off and joined up with another mob, and I thought, bugger it, James, quick, grab the cameras, we're going to punch up this hill and go around the other side, and as they peek around, I'm going to flash the buck with the decoy. And that all worked perfectly. I'm doing a very much surmise sort of version just because we've had so many amazing stalks on these animals. But where the trouble then lies is that I was trying to hide James about 30 yards back from the decoy, and then I didn't really have that much cover on this open hill face to then hide myself. Plus I was trying to smash the tent poles in, or the decoy poles in, to this hard rocky ground. And luckily for me, it was on the edge of some ag, and this pronghorn buck basically saw the decoy. I yelled out to James he's coming, and then scurried back to my bow, which I put probably another 10 meters behind the decoy. And in a flash, honestly, click of the fingers, this buck was up and probably at about 30 yards from the decoy. And once he hit that range, he sort of slowed down, and I came to full draw, had my multi-pin sight on him, and I was sort of umming up between, is he at 30, 40, 20, as he was doing this loop into the decoy. And he sort of came in straight on and then arched towards the back end of the decoy there, as they seem to do. They seem to want to come in from the rear, which makes sense. They probably don't want to come into the fighting end. So that all worked out perfectly, and his attention was pretty much fully on the decoy. I'm at full draw. Where it gets tricky is that he pretty much stopped front onto me, and I had a bead on his heart, and where I had my pin was pretty much perfect at 30 yards, or what I imagine was just high 20s, if not 30 meters. And what happened last second, just before I squeezed off the release, is the buck, you'll actually see in the footage, turns his gaze to me, notices that there's something beyond the decoy, and in I guess conjunction with me kneeling down and fully twisted around anti-clockwise, sort of, I'd say at least 90, maybe 120 degrees from where I started. I don't know if I was torquing my bow slightly, but basically I was out by probably 3 or 4 inches to the left, but the buck also reacted to the shot and dropped and turned. And what you'll see in the footage, which is amazing footage by James, and again paired with that afternoon lighting and that golden hour, is this crazy tuft of hair fly off this pronghorn's brisket. And again, we've commented a few times when James laid hands on the pronghorn, and we finally got to see one up close in the previous episode, just how amazing their hair is. It's almost like bristly, sort of wiry hair, but very long and light. And basically, my Kayuga broadhead zipped through the front of his brisket, didn't actually touch his, didn't harm the pronghorn at all, but basically gave him a skinhead clip job. It was that close, I imagine. And unfortunately, that left him running off down the prairie, I guess. He looked back a couple of times, still interested in the decoy, but then ultimately his does draw him away. And to be honest, that was pretty gut-wrenching for me. Again, the shot felt really good, but it was just a reminder of, I need to probably slow things down, range the animal first, set it up a bit better, maybe take a little bit more time setting up, and not let the excitement and the rush of decoy calling, just because there's no real trees that you can pre-range. It's just tufts of sage or tufts of grass or maybe a tiny little rock, and you lose track of it so quickly when those animals are running in the space of a minute, trying to keep yourself composed and grounded. And that basically surmises the pronghorn hunting for me. whether it was one or two little things, whether a doe would see us and bust out there, or the buck would be coming in, but I couldn't plant the decoy firmly in the ground. I was just having none of it. And fortunately for me, James took over, did a little bit of elk hunting, did a little bit of deer hunting, but ultimately the time came again when it was my turn to take Gary the decoy and try for another buck. This particular afternoon, we went searching for pronghorn in an area that we've never previously hunted. We had seen them there from afar, from like miles and miles away from certain elevated points, but we'd never actually gone down there and hunted these animals at all. Like, they were very much naive to the decoy, very much naive to us being a threat, even potentially other hunters in the area. It's all public land, but we hadn't really seen any other people hunting for antelope. There'd been a lot of upland bird hunters and things like that in the area. So we pretty much classified this mob as not knowing what a decoy was, which really made us feel like our chances were going to be quite high. What we didn't account for, unfortunately, was that, in the rush of coming in, they're going to obviously circle downwind. And unfortunately, in that moment that I'd set up a decoy on a really, really nice buck on an ag field, he had, I think, about 6 or 7 does, and I'd snuck into probably about 100, 150 yards, had James set up on the ridge behind me with the camera gear, managed to flash him, put the decoy in the ground, got back to my bow, and everything was working. The process was going perfectly. Like, here I am thinking, all right, I've flashed him, the doe's unaware, he's coming in, job's pretty much done, I just need to be composed, which I was. I'd pre-ranged everything. And unfortunately, that buck was coming in and hit 30 meters and basically, like a punch to the face, got my wind and just hightailed it out of there. And then that was it. And that just, again, was sort of a bit of a kick in the guts, because it was like I'd accounted for everything else. The wind was in my face. I'd checked it. It was just that the thermals must have just changed for the afternoon and started sucking sort of down this gully and wrapped around and caught him, obviously. And again, he just ran to the does. The does never smelt us, but there was just never an opportunity to sort of relocate them and try and get in position or get back around in front of them. Just the way that they move, they were sort of rutting again, and then by the time they did that, they were a mile away. So there's another day gone, another opportunity just gone like that, and here I am starting to think like, nah, this isn't happening. So that next morning, we elected to have a sleep in, do the town run as we said in the opener, and we got back just after lunchtime, had a feed at a diner, which, to be honest, it wasn't even amazing food, but it was just so much food and something different to the current food that we've been eating out here in the bush. We had a chocolate thick shake, which went down like a dream, and to be honest, I think every time we have a chocolate thick shake, something tends to happen. If you guys can, think back to James's hunt in the limited entry unit, against all odds from 2023, we ended up shooting a big bull elk not long after we had a chocolate thick shake, and this time we ended up getting a nice pronghorn buck this particular afternoon once we got back. And we grabbed the bows, grabbed the gear, chucked on all the new camouflage gear, chucked on the lower boots, and away we were, again hunting an area where previously we'd seen some mule deer bucks. We were looking for elk, hadn't seen any elk, but did see a rutting mob of pronghorn. And James and I were like, yep, that should be a good area to go back to. So here we are actually driving out there, and just as we parked to start looking over a massive area, big basin, up in front of us, about a mile or so away, we started seeing some dust flying. And putting the binoculars up, we realized that there was 2 pronghorn bucks chasing, I think it was about 3 does at the time. And they were a mile away, and in the space of about a minute, they were probably 2 to 3 miles away. So we actually turned the car back on, followed them up to where we'd last see them go over a ridge, parked the car there, got out, glassed again, and in the space of another couple of minutes, they were another probably 2 miles away. But this time we elected to basically just say, and by that stage they'd actually stopped, and the 2 bucks and 3 does had then joined on to another rutting mob of pronghorn. So now we've got pronghorn up to our ears. I think there was anywhere from 4 bucks in this mob and about 6 does. And we elected to actually get our packs on and just do the hunt from there, obviously with their keen eyesight, not wanting to get spotted from the car. Plus we just liked our chances better of being able to duck in between, some ridges and stuff and get a bit of cover and topography between us and them. And it worked out really, really well, because after about 20-30 minutes, we wound up probably about 500 meters, would you say? I'd probably say about that from these rutting mob. And what we saw was really cool. Like, I've never seen the pronghorn rut that hard. I've seen bucks chase each other and them sort of get into this zombie-like trance where they're like, I guess, chasing each other and they sort of lose track of what's going on around them. But these bucks were like urinating on themselves. They were rubbing their heads together, like almost like rams do. They were pissing on bushes, rubbing bushes with their horns, strutting around the does in circles, like headbutting the does, chasing the does. It was just like dust and everything kicking up. Like, it really was fascinating to watch. And we just sat there off them, again, now completely in the open, nothing but a slight hill separating us and them. And it very much became a waiting game. And the afternoon started getting away from us, and that's when our luck sort of changed, I guess. And from their left, a couple of 100 yards in front of us, 2 young bucks and another, like, I think it was a solitary doe, sort of branched off and came up over the ridge. So there must have been another mob behind the ridge that we couldn't see. And that actually attracted one of the bigger bucks. And in my head, there were 2 bucks that were very distinctive. There was one very much like a typical pronghorn buck, probably similar size to James's, which we've sort of worked out is a really, really like beautiful pronghorn, and something that I would have been absolutely stoked taking. And then there was a second buck, which was actually a little bit smaller, but his horns looked a little bit funny from a distance. Like, every time he would turn either dead arse on away or front on, it looked like his horns kind of like crept in and made like a bit of an archway. And he just looked like he was a big mature animal body-wise, but he just never really looked as long as the other one, but he still had quite a bit of mass. And I'd said to myself, like, if either of these bucks present a shot, I'd happily take them, just with how everything was going pronghorn hunting and the fact that I kind of wanted to focus more on deer and elk and just, to be honest, get another tag out of the way. And as it turns out, this buck with the sort of unique antlers, or the unique horns, I should say, he saw these 2 younger bucks and the doe down below him, and he started coming down. And I took that opportunity to sort of basically pop up the decoy in front in the event that he would see it from probably 300 yards away at this point. And I was hoping basically that he would see it and go, oh, there's another doe or buck down there. I'm going to start making my way into that just to check it out. And fingers crossed, by the time that I basically put it up, it would be in the instance that he would come down off this ridge before it got dark, and it would give me a chance to basically take a buck. And basically, like reading a book or reading the script, this buck saw it, was initially quite slow coming in, but eventually went, okay, yep, I'm committing, and came in. And as he was coming in, I was basically kneeling down, arrow on the string. James was behind me. The same sort of setup that we'd worked out works really, really well on these pronghorn. Have the decoy in front, have the shooter just behind it where you can use the decoy to draw and have a bit of concealment, and then have the cameraman behind the hunter. And where this older buck sort of caught me out off guard is that I didn't really have much cover between me and the decoy was on a ridge, and I was hoping he was going to come in straight on as they typically had been. But again, maybe being an older buck and a bit more cautious, he ended up doing a bigger loop, sort of trying to cut the wind of this decoy. And he did a bigger loop, and it basically left me exposed. So I was stuck laying on my side, couldn't draw back the bow. And he got to a point where I was sort of guessing him anywhere between 30 and 50 meters. And I was like sitting there. And this buck just was stopped, didn't look at me once, but was just looking at the decoy. And it got to the point where I was like, he's either going to keep going and cut our wind because he's not coming in any closer, but he's within shooting range. So I sort of rose up to my knees, ranged him, had the arrow on the string, ranged him at 44 yards, whispered to James he's at 44, drew back the bow, and I put my 40-meter pin low on his heart. And I was lucky I did that. And because, again, knowing I accounted for, if I put it low on his heart and I'm shooting 40 meters, 40 meter pin at 44 meters, if he drops, it still should hit him in the heart. And I was just lucky that he did read the script as well, dropped, it hit him perfectly in the heart, and he would have run, I dare say, probably about 100 yards and toppled over. But what was really cool following that is that those same young bucks and some of the does had come down following behind him, and they sat there about 100 yards away from us, just watching us, not knowing what had gone on. They were sort of looking at the buck who had expired, looking back at us, looking at the buck, looking at me, looking at the decoy. And that went on pretty much until the sun was just about dipping past the horizon. And it was awesome to then walk up, finally lay hands on my very own pronghorn after a couple of big days of hunting them and some really cool spot and stalk opportunities early in the week that I wasn't able to capitalize on, and then some really fun decoy hunting. And it was just really good, to be honest, to notch both of our tags in the sense of James had shot an antelope, I'd shot an antelope. And it meant that we could then focus our efforts more on deer and elk for the coming days. And again, we spoke about it in previous podcasts, but these creatures are so fascinating. And laying hands on this particular pronghorn, it became evident super quickly by looking at his teeth and just the horns that he was a really, really, really like old buck, quite mature. His body size was probably a bit smaller than James's, again, going back past his prime. But what was cool is that his horns came in from left and right, met towards the middle, and then like crossed over. And it sounds funny, but with most pronghorn, their horns go up and they start curling in, but they never come anywhere close to meeting in the middle. But with this particular buck, if I put my hand straight out and slide the horns over it, both horns actually sit over my arm, and it almost would act as a bracelet, which is cool. It nearly makes a full circle, which is quite unique. And since showing it to a few people, they've said that's actually a really, really cool buck, which is great to hear. I was obviously stoked with him and happy that it was a quick, clean like kill, and that, to be honest, we got some more pronghorn meat because it's super mild, very, very tender, even on these rutting bucks. It's been absolutely delicious with very good flavour, and we've just been having the tenderloins and heart, and we actually got back to camp, had some tenderloins and heart wraps with capsicum, a little bit of bacon, some onion, and yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. Like, we've just got back to camp now, and yeah, we're going to basically look after all the meat. We're going to go and look for elk, I believe, in the morning tomorrow. It's been a big couple of days. We got our refresher today by going into town, and tomorrow James is up for elk. So that's it for today. We've just finished our drive. As you can hear, the gravel and the cars sort of turned off, but we are back at camp. It is after dark now. Another big day on the hill. So we're going to charge camera gear, do card drops, finish off that dinner, and yeah, we will see you guys on another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. That is tag number 3 out of 6 filled, which is an awesome feeling. Pretty keen to see what tag number 4 looks like. As I said, we've got a bull elk and 2 pronghorn on the deck. So another bull elk would be absolutely amazing, and then 2 deer, mule deer buck or a whitetail buck would be absolutely stellar as well. So no FAQs today, as I said earlier, but we will look forward to catching you guys on next episode of the Twin Elements podcast next week. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope you guys like these sort of variations of the semi-live hunts that we're recording out here in the film field. It's a bit of work, a bit tiring, doing all the filming, photography, time lapses, podcasts, all that type of stuff, but we know you guys love it, and we, as always, appreciate your support. So cheers, guys. We'll see you next week.